Congressman, and now we'd hear from Doc Hastings.
Thank you.
Honorable Doc Hastings. And you're yielding the time to him, I'm assuming.
I am. Good. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate this, and Ranking Member Bozeman, thank you for allowing me to be here to put my thoughts in order. In 1995, the Lower Columbia Estuary System was put in place as part of one of the 28 estuaries worldwide, and I applaud the work that they're doing. It's a public-private partnership between Washington and Oregon with 28 cities and other entities involved. Since 1999, this plan was implemented specifically defining estuaries as, and I quote, the area where the fresh water of the river meets the salt water of the ocean. And I point that out because this occurs about 46 miles from the Columbia River. Nevertheless, the Partners Management Plan covers an area up to Bonneville Dam. That's 146 miles from the river. I totally agree with the work that they're doing in that area because I think it is connected. And while I appreciate the good intentions that are part of this bill, I must say that I have great concerns about what the scope of the bill does, because the bill proposes to greatly expand the scope and management of the Columbia River beyond the estuary that I just talked about. For example, it'll impact 500 miles of the Columbia River and its tributaries in my district alone. It also impacts above Bonneville Dam 745 miles to the Canadian border. That is far removed from the estuary. In that area, there are 11 major federal and non-federal dams. There's a national monument. There's the Hanford project that Mr. Blumenauer alluded to, and there's 600,000 acres of irrigated farmland that's irrigated by the Columbia River. So this has a huge impact in my district, but also goes beyond that to the Snake River in Washington and Idaho. There's a $10 billion economic impact from just commerce coming down that part of the river, and the tributaries of the Columbia in Snake that goes to eastern Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, parts of Nevada, and Utah. In other words, this goes far beyond the estuary as defined by the group. Now, I have to say, this expansion should not be minimized or understated. So as we move through on this bill and talk about this, I would like to say something that I'm very concerned about, and that is that I was not contacted by the sponsors of this bill until the day before this bill was introduced. Now, I regret that because we in the Northwest have worked very closely on a lot of pieces of legislation that impact all of us. And I would have at least liked to have had the courtesy to say, okay, this is what is being contemplated. And that simply was not the case. Now, let me be clear. I would support legislation that focuses on the Columbia River estuary. I want to make that absolutely clear. I have no problem with that. But when we greatly expand this, we ought to see exactly what the consequences of this bill is. For example, this bill is silent on litigation that is being involved in the whole Columbia River. And I might add, the Columbia River is probably the most litigated river in the United States. This bill also makes reference, giving EPA the authority to I guess, have authority over issues that are given to other federal agencies, like NOAA, like the Corps of Engineers, like Bonneville Power, like U.S. Fish and Wildlife, like the Bureau of Reclamation, and like the Department of Energy. In other words, the bill as it's written could destroy, from my point of view, the collaborations that's going on amongst these agencies. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed very specifically. Furthermore, and let me just be very specific, Section 123B would authorize the EP administrator to establish, and I quote, a Columbia River program team, end quote, led by a team leader, quote, designated to, quote, coordinate all the functions or several functions, including Endangered Species Act. Now, I'm the ranking member on the Committee on Natural Resources. We have authority on that, and I think that our committee ought to have the ability to review what potential that would have. So, Madam Chair, I just want to make this point. I support the estuary program. This bill, as written, greatly, as it relates to the Columbia River, expands that scope, and not only to the Columbia River, but to all the tributaries, as I pointed out. And one last point that I think that needs to be taken in consideration, because you're hearing two bills today. This bill alone authorizes $40 million, which is more than is authorized for all of the estuary programs in this country combined. So as this legislation moves forward, if it moves forward, I would certainly hope that there is coordination and correspondence and talk amongst those members that are impacted by this bill. But in short, I support the estuary program. I do not support the tremendous expansion that this would have on the Columbia River that is not defined as the estuary. Thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Congressman Hastings. We have a vote.
Madam
We have
Chair.
10 minutes, so we will like to move on to Ms. Spear, and then we'll recess until we take the next vote.
Just for 15 seconds. Now I see why my colleague wanted me to go first. I will provide information on this, but I want to give the congressman
Thank you.
copy of information where he was in
Fine,
fact
but let's
invited
go with Ms.
earlier.
Spear. Thank you. Ms. Spear.
Could I ask unanimous consent my full statement appear on the record? I don't think I asked.
Certainly. Oh, without objection.